Ah, theropods, the nature's largest land carnivores. Since that meteorite struck 65 million years ago, they have been dead and gone. Anyways, welcome back to the channel, guys. Welcome back to another video. And today we will talk about why the theropod body plan has been gone for 65 million years and we haven't seen anything else evolve into similar body plans or into filling the similar niches. So already we know that theropods are the carnivore dinosaurs that were mostly bipedal, and these are some of the biggest carnivores of all time. They dwarf most modern carnivores, at least on land, and they hunted giant animals too. So first of all, we need to understand that can similar body plans re-emerge through evolution? Well, they absolutely can. One of the best example is this: the Facilosauchus and Burinasuchus, two animals which have very similar body plan, and both are essentially land-based galloping crocodilians, or sorry, not true crocodilians, crocodilomorphs in that sense, or pseudosuchians essentially. But they evolved in very different time periods. They are separated by 150 million years of evolution, yet their body plans are surprisingly similar to each other. Like, Facilosauchus is essentially the largest land carnivore before the dinosaurs. So it primarily existed before dinosaurs. It did exist somewhat in the very early Jurassic, but eventually went extinct and was replaced by dinosaurs. On the other hand, Burinasuchus existed after dinosaurs. So after dinosaurs went extinct, there were a lot of land carnivore niches which were vacant, specifically in South America, and that is where we see the evolution of Burinasuchus. So absolutely similar body plans or similar evolutionary adaptations can emerge to fulfill certain niches. Another great example is sauropods and giraffes, both evolving very long legs and a very long neck to eat the leaves at the very top branches, or Styracosaurus and rhinos, both evolving long pointed horns to defend against predators. Or you can take the example of prehistory, where you can look at the Glyptodons or the Diochirus, which evolved similar body armor and tail club to ankylosaurids, and at the same time the you can say Kelenkin or other phorosids, the giant terror birds, they evolved similar to gigantoraptors. So absolutely, mammals and birds can evolve similar body plans to dinosaurs if they are viable for that particular niche. However, one particular body plan we see missing time and time again is the body plan of large megatheropods. Like, yes, you could make the argument that Kalenkin was kind of like them, but not really. Kalenkin's body plan was more similar to Gigantoraptor than it was to any of the large mega carnivores of Mesozoic. So nothing like Allosaurids or Carcharodontosaurids or Ceratosaurids or Tyrannosaurids, nothing like them. So that begs the question, why? It's not like we don't have carnivores in the modern day. We do have mammalian carnivores, but mammalian carnivores are drastically different in their whole build than the Mesozoic megapredators. And today we will analyze why that is, and one thing we will learn something about the anatomy. At the same time, I believe this could also be seen as a speculative evolution, as in order to evolve into the megatheropod sizes again, they will have to start small once again, because the asteroid was a hard reset. So once the hard reset happens, another species, if it needs to evolve into the theropod body plan, it needs to do it from scratch once again. And that is where you will see how those creatures might run into certain problems. But anyways, here is a demonstration of four of the largest land carnivores today. First major difference among the modern land carnivores and prehistoric theropods were their bites. Now I talk in more detail about different type of bite morphology in another video. I will put the link in the card, go check it out, and I speak in more detail. But the long and short of it is that theropods had mostly uniform dentition, like most of their teeth were the same size. Due to this, even though they had tremendous bite force, that bite force was distributed over a larger area, causing less penetration, hence less damage. On the other hand, if you look at mammalian carnivores, more specifically big cats, they have very asymmetrical teeth, where some of their teeth, more specifically their canines, are massive compared to other teeth like the incisors. Due to this, whenever they bite, whatever bite force they're applying is only applied at the very tips of these four canines, because the rest of the teeth are not even touching the prey animal. It's only these four teeth that are biting down, due to which the force is concentrated at the very tip of these sharp, long canines, and this leads to much deeper penetration, which obviously leads to more damage per bite. At the same time, these type of bites are much better for grabbing and holding on to prey than the theropod bites, because again, more penetration means better grip, similar to, climbing mountains with the ice pick. The deeper you put your ice pick, the more secure a grip. Same here. So that's the first major difference we see here. And at the same time, you will see certain other adaptations which suggest that theropods were primarily a pursuit predator, meaning they chased their prey to exhaustion, in contrast to modern day apex predators, which are almost all ambush predators. Granted, there are wolves and obviously humans, but that's beyond the point here. What you will see also is that theropods, most of them, had very blade-like teeth. Their teeth were very similar to sharks, especially the theropods that hunted larger animals. So the mega predatory theropods that hunted either sauropods, or let's say that hunted Edmontosauruses, Hadrosauruses in general. These animals had very blade-like teeth, and this is meant for bleedy bites, so they would bite their prey and cause them to bleed out. At the same time, they have very efficient bird-like unidirectional respiratory system, which allowed these creatures to keep running for very long periods of time, which suggests that they hunted more like wolves, a pursuit predator, meaning that keeps chasing their prey, occasionally biting at the hindquarters of those prey animals, causing them to bleed while they are running, eventually leading to exhaustion and collapse. Due to this, the prey animals evolved defenses that focus on the backside. For example, the club tails of ankylosaurids, the spiky tails of stegosaurids or similar animals. And for wolves, because wolves essentially, or the ancestor of wolves, caniforms in general, evolved in North America. You know what other animal evolved in North America? Equids, horses. And if you look at horses, they are some of the few animals that have backward facing weaponry. They are kicks. That is because that is evolved against pursuit predators which come from behind or attack from behind. So similar to Edmontosaurus or other hadrosaurs, which had really powerful hind legs, which, while they didn't have as powerful a tail as something like, Ankylosaurus, their kicks would have been mighty powerful. Same goes with sauropods. A lot of sauropods had very powerful tails, which allowed them to deter predators coming from behind. So it's very safe to assume that most theropods were pursuit predators rather than modern day ambush predators, which are big cats. Big cats, which are modern day ambush predators, for the most part attack the front of the body, either the neck, throat, head, snout, depending upon the species. I have a detailed video on that, go check it out. But on the other hand, the pursuit predators attack behind. Big cats or other ambush predators attack the front part of the body. This is why most modern prey animals have evolved weapons at the front of their body, such as horns or tusks, because they need to defend at that portion. That is where they are most likely to get attacked. Now, granted, there is an exception to this theory, which is the ceratopsians. Ceratopsians had very forward-facing defenses as well as forward-facing weaponry. So this could lead some people to believe that the animals or the theropods that hunted ceratopsians were probably most likely ambush predators, which is not really the case, because while it seems plausible, there are certain other adaptations for an ambush predator that is very important that theropods simply did not have. And by the way, something like this will simply not be possible. Great paleo art, by the way, but this simply won't be possible for a theropod to do, to stand on one leg while running. And one of the big differences you will see between the modern carnivores and theropods is that arms. Modern carnivores have massive muscular arms. All of them do. Either it's big cats, bears, all of them have very robust forward arms or forward limbs. Sometimes even bigger than their back limbs, which is not something you will see in dinosaurs, in theropods specifically. Among theropods, there are obviously exceptional ones like allosaurids, which had relatively longer arms, quote unquote relatively, by the way. These arms, while they're much bigger than something like abelisaurids, which had very small, almost vestigial arms, these allosaurus arms are nowhere near their level of robustity as or robustness or robusticity, I don't know, whichever is the correct word, is nowhere near as robust as tigers, lions, or even something like a bear. Their arms are not that big, and this can have different results when it comes to hunting strategies, where big cats will have much easier time pinning down a prey than a theropod. For example, the theropod can only really attack the prey animal with their bites. If they don't get a bite on a vital area, like let's say on the throat, they won't be able to hold on to large prey animals. That's not the case with big cats or sometimes bears, though bears are not that good at this holding on and pinning down thing. But big cats are. And because big cats have their front limbs to assist them, what they can do with it is essentially they can maintain balance with their hind limbs, use the front limbs to essentially attach and pin down their prey, and then deliver their devastating bite, making sure that the bite lands on a very vulnerable area, usually on the throat or the neck. That is not a luxury theropods can afford because of their body plan. Another thing is theropods, because they stood on two legs, were far less stable than an animal running on all four legs. So if a theropod somehow manages to get a grip on a large animal today, let's say an elephant, they will still be struggling to hold on to that prey while that prey is moving, because they only have two legs, and if that prey somehow pushes in either side and dislodge one of the legs from balance position, the theropod will come toppling over. That is not a problem quadrupeds have, a problem bipeds have. This is why you don't see many bipedal apex predators evolve afterwards that at least go close contact with an animal and kill them. Obviously, humans are bipedal, but most of the hunting humans did were with ranged weapons, at least against large animals. We mostly used ranged weapons. We didn't go and wrestle them to death. So that's a pretty big problem. This is why something like I don't know, Albertosaurus or Displatosaurus or any other such large carnivores would be struggling to hunt something like an elephant or a rhino, because while their bites were very powerful, the bites were nowhere near penetrating enough to hold on to a prey like that while keeping the dinosaur standing. Because remember, these animals, these herbivores, are about as heavy as these theropods. So once they start moving and thrashing around, it will be rather difficult for this bipedal theropod, which has a rather high center of gravity, to remain standing. And once you fall down near an elephant after you have attacked it, we all know how that story goes. This is why actually the discussion about Paleoloxodon versus T-Rex is so stupid. It's like the T-Rex won't be able to hold on to a charging Paleoloxodon, or a Paleoloxodon that wants to free itself. It can simply shrug it off and make the T-Rex fall down, because it's nowhere near as stable as, let's say, something that actually hunts elephants, which is like a big cat. Another thing is, yes, while most large theropods, the megatheropods, were not very adept for grappling, some raptors were actually decent at grappling. Granted, they had forward facing limbs, like forward limbs, which were somewhat more developed, though nowhere near developed enough like big cats. But they had claws on those, and they could latch onto prey animals. So what about them? The problem with these animals is that they were extremely lightweight for their size. Like the same sized, I don't know, raptor would probably be like half the weight of a modern carnivore. And they were way less muscle dense. They had nowhere near the muscle density to pin down a large prey animal. And with an ambush, the main objective is to prevent your prey from getting back to the safety, usually the safety of the herd. Which means even if the modern day raptors, quote unquote, can latch onto one of the prey animals, in this case an elk, the elk can still run while this raptor is latched onto them. And raptors didn't have devastating bites like big cats, so that they can bite the throat and kill it. That's something not raptors could do to large animals, because their bite force was not very strong. At the same time, their teeth were not designed to do something like that. Which means even if they latch onto a prey, the prey animal can continue to run, go back to safety, and have one of their friends or one of the other herd members essentially attack the raptor and get it off. Which means while this grappling looks possible in paper, it's not going to be super effective against large prey animals. When you contrast this to modern carnivores, which are much more muscle dense, even some of the lightweights like this cheetah over here will be able to pin down large prey animals like that due to them being much heavier. One is obviously them being much heavier, but the second point is that they can deal devastating amounts of damage into specific areas with their specific bites. And obviously those bites also help them hold on to the prey and pin them down. That's the main thing here. Grappling is mostly, the goal of the grappling is to pin your opponent down on the ground. So one, you stop them from counterattacks. Two, you stop them from moving back to safety. That is something where the raptor fails. Another thing is vulnerability to counterattacks. While it's true that raptor bones were more flexible than mammalian bones due to being pneumatic somewhat, at the same time they were not impact resistant, because one, they were less dense, so any impact could puncture or crack those bones much easier, instead of snapping them, it could crack them with like impact based forces. Compared to what this was really good at is against compression. So due to that, these bones being very flexible, a large massive creature like a T-Rex could exist because those bones were very springy, very flexible. On the other hand, it was not very good against compression, against impact force. Sorry, not compression, against puncture or impact forces, due to which more dense bones evolved among mammals, where the same type of kick that would simply leave a lion with some bruises would actually shatter the skull of, I don't know, Utahraptor or other Dromaeosaurus, Dakotaraptor. So that's another problem the modern day raptorans or modern day theropods would have to face. Now, another major weakness that they had in general across all theropods was their dependency on bipedalism. Now, obviously, this dependency varied between species, like not all species of theropods were as dependent on bipedalism. For example, spinosaurids could actually walk on all fours if they wanted to, but most large apex carnivore theropods were very much dependent on bipedalism and could not, for the life of it, walk on all fours. And this is a problem because while mammalians, even if they take an injury to one of their legs, can still not only run but sometimes run away, not run very well obviously, but they can walk away from certain situations, they can scavenge, they can even drink water. If one of the legs of a large theropod is broken, it's a death sentence for them. They can't move from that spot anymore. Once their legs broken, they are done for. This is kind of why I believe these type of like ankylosaurid tail clubs essentially evolved to counter this weakness, to exploit this weakness, is that this vulnerability is quite big because while predators are very careful while trying to hunt animals, but sometimes injuries are bound to happen. And while an injury to the leg might be painful for a quadruped animal, it can still survive, especially if it has pack mates which can feed it, or he or she can scavenge off their kills, walk around, drink some water, rest, heal that injury. That's not something a theropod can do. If their leg is broken and they are not near water, they will die of thirst, because once their hind legs, obviously I'm not talking about the front legs, their hind legs, which they walked on, the main legs, if one of them gets not even fully broken, just injured enough so that they cannot walk on two legs, they're done for. They cannot walk to the water. While their packmates might bring them food at occasions, they won't have any water. They will die of dehydration without healing. This vulnerability is also one of the reasons why we don't see this body plan make a comeback. Now, while looking at the prey section, we realize that predators like the theropods would have quite a bit difficulty facing modern day prey animals, accounting for that many of modern day prey animals use goring tactics, which is like charging forward. At the same time, there are horse-like creatures which can kick backwards, both of which exist, both of which are very robust, and the theropod struggles against both of them. So while we look at their prey adaptation isn't very good, it's mediocre at best, where they could hunt some smaller mammals to survive. Their competitions are quite devastating, just to say the least. Like, first of all, they will face direct competition from modern day predators if they are trying to hunt the same type of prey. So here I am going to discuss two different type of competitions they will face. One is the direct competition, one is the indirect competition, and they are symbolized by two different animals. One is the jaguar and one is the grizzly bear. But the thing is, if they're of the similar size, a theropod has nowhere near the chance of beating in a fight, in a 1v1 at least, against some of the modern day carnivores. A theropod of similar size have no hope of beating something like a jaguar or even something like a grizzly bear, because again their terrible vulnerability of two legs or bipedalism renders them pretty vulnerable to getting pounced on, pinned down, and essentially have their throats ripped apart or have their backs broken, depending upon which creature attacks them. So obviously these new dromaeosaurs, I would say, because they're still dromaeosaur size, or neo-theropods, that let's call them that. Let's say it's a spec evo situation, and these are animals that are evolving into theropods, so they would be called neo-theropods. These neo-theropods would firstly face direct predation. These mammals are so much more agile and way more muscle dense. They could and absolutely will hunt these neo-theropods, and because they're so much more powerful, they would be it would be a very one-sided matchup. Secondly, which is the, you can say, secondary type of competition or passive competition, not active competition, which is like driven off of kills. Even if somehow with these previous mentioned struggles, these new theropods manage to bring down some type of animal, they will very often be chased off their kills by other more powerful predators. A great example of this are bears. Bears are very well known kleptoparasites. They are specialized into stealing kills from other predators, and they are built for it. They have very robust defenses, they have their size for intimidation, they can also stand on two legs. This is actually a great example of using bipedalism correctly. Like obviously humans use bipedalism correctly, but that's due to tool use. But facultative bipedalism can be useful. For example, grizzly bears. They can stand on two legs to get a huge intimidation bonuses, which is something theropods don't get because they're always on two legs, so they cannot change their size. If you suddenly see a creature grow much bigger than you realized it was, it will be a pretty big factor in psychology in terms of intimidation. At the same time, the bears have really powerful front limbs, which can again slap and cause serious injury to these hollow boned theropods, as well as in terms of a wrestling. Both of the animals, like even bears, are very muscle dense creatures compared to a theropod because of how flimsy built these are. Theropods, being a pursuit predators, were built more like wolves. They were built more for long distance chases, for speeds, not for tussling or wrestling with other animals. Due to, on the other hand, most apex mammalian carnivores are very much built for that. They're built for ambush and pinning down their prey. So due to that, this will be pretty devastating. Not to mention that quite a bit of the modern day nest thieves, or either they eat eggs or they hunt the babies, were not present at the time when theropods evolved. So most theropods, if not all of them, will be ground nesting creatures. And we all know how vulnerable ground nesting animals are today. House cats, raccoons, otters, as well as rats, all Komodo dragons or other monitor lizards, all of them always go for ground nesting birds at first. Same thing here. Even if somehow, let's say, a theropod manages to bring to a size where these mammalian carnivores aren't big enough to, fight them, their babies will be unbelievably vulnerable to predation because of how agile these modern predators are, how quickly they can kill a baby dinosaur, and more importantly, how quickly they can get away because they can climb trees. A lot of the mesopredators of modern day, like leopards, or let's say snow leopards, clouded leopards, or different pumas, etc., or even apex predators like jaguars, all of them can climb trees very well. Large dinosaurs couldn't climb trees very well, or at all in most cases. They did not. Even something like a Utahraptor, which has big claws, has absolutely no chance of climbing a tree. Now, you might say that's because of the size. Even something smaller, like let's say a chilobator, had absolutely no chance of climbing trees. They could jump on branches, much like a bird, but they couldn't climb like a cat. Due to this, what these predators can do is sneak around, reach the nest, kill one of the babies, and run up the tree, waiting there till the parents leave and come down to eat them. Theropods did not evolve to handle such predatory pressure, which will eventually force them into marginalized areas. Does that mean all hope is lost? Theropods can never evolve? No, not really. Theropods can evolve, and something close to that, though not like megatheropods or any close to that body pattern, but something close to that actually happened, and it happened in isolation. For example, in Pleistocene South America, it was rather isolated, especially in the early Pleistocene. It was rather isolated area, like cut off from the rest of the world, and did not have large mammalian carnivores. As a result, we see avians taking another go at land predation, or being a land-based predator, which is where we get the ferocids or the terror birds essentially. Also, I think there were some other terror birds too in the Australia, which is another isolated continent, you can say. So not only do we see another mammalian avian on land, not mammalian avian, what am I talking about? Uh, Land-based, a terrestrial avian being a carnivore, we also see that the prey animals that existed in there at the time evolving similar defenses to the animals that actually were hunted by theropods. For example, the glyptodons or the dodecahiroses evolved tail clubs and solid body armor to deal with the ferocids or the terror birds, similar to how ankylosaurids evolved very solid body armor and tail clubs to deal with T-rexes or other large carnivore theropods. So absolutely that type of situation can occur, but the key here is isolation, because once the isolation was over and animals from North America could cross back into the South, not cross back, to cross into South America through the land bridge of Panama, these changed quite quickly. The Duochirus, Glyptodon, etc. went extinct much earlier than other large herbivores because they got outcompeted by modern herbivores like the mammalian ones. At the same time, the ferocids also went extinct. They did coexist with Smilodons and other macharodontine cats as well as pantherine cats for a while, but eventually they got outcompeted and possibly hunted to extinction. So isolation is the key. Now that begs the question, is there a modern equivalent to this? Could this happen in the modern day? And I point your attention to Australia. Australia is rather isolated. There aren't large, big cats or bears currently living in the continent. At the same time, there is a lot of prey animals that are very different from the mainland prey animals, which are way better defended to defend against something as flimsy as a theropod. For example, kangaroos, which also coincidentally happen to be some of the animals which are bipedal. So a bipedal theropod will have advantage pinning down or toppling over a bipedal kangaroo mid-run, which is not something they will be able to do against a more stable, more robust quadruped like, let's say, a buffalo. And obviously this won't start like this. They would have to start small, and a lot of people have did the speculative evolution where they think it would start from emus or cassowaries, though it's more likely that emus or cassowaries would evolve into more ornithomimid body plan. I think if any animal has any chance of evolving into a theropod, it will have to be the Australian wedge-tailed eagle. They are pretty big, and they do hunt a variety of prey animals. So they could eventually go for a land-based build, given there is not enough competition from the invasive species, because already there are some invasive species of predators in Australia, such as feral cats or foxes. Now, you might think a feral cat won't be too much of a problem, but we have seen feral cats take down wallabies. So if one of these land-based neo-theropods start existing in there, they would probably have to be in an area where large feral cats or foxes are not a constant threat to their ground nests as well as the adults. So the speculative evolution here is that they would eventually evolve into land-based kind of roadrunner-like creatures with much bigger terrorbird-like heads to hunt small mammals such as numbats and other little things like quokkas, maybe the occasional koala, but stuff like that. And the reason they would do a ground-based build is to chase these animals into burrows, because birds kind of struggle to get into burrows because of their big wings. So a reduction of wing size and being more land-based would allow them to chase these small prey animals into their burrows. Now, eventually, these could grow to the size of dingoes, where they start attacking things like kangaroos as well as deer, because deer is an invasive species in Australia. So once they become a bit bigger, like let's say a chilobator or something like that, of that sort of sizes, they could potentially start to go after kangaroos and topple them over. They would still struggle to topple over large deer species like a sambar or moose, etc. But they would absolutely have a good chance of chasing down and pinning down kangaroos. Because one, kangaroos are similarly bipedal as them, so they will not have as much of a problem pinning them down. Secondly, kangaroos are really fast, so catching up to them might be difficult for any neo big cats or neo pantherine cats that might evolve in the future in Australia, because from the house cats today, which can, by the way, grow up to 8 feet, I heard, or at least 6 feet. 6 feet is confirmed, 8 feet is speculated. But either way, like these cats, if they ever evolve and will be direct competition with these theropods, but let's say they're not in competition still, an animal that can run for very long and can run rather fast, because theropods were pretty fast, could actually be pretty good predators of kangaroos. And while this succeeds, if this succeeds, they will actually grow much bigger, eventually big enough to the size of Utahraptors, where they could drive off entire packs of dingoes from kills like this water buffalo kill. By the way, water buffalo, another invasive species that exists in Australia right now, which on very ultra rare occasions probably gets killed by dingoes. Though the thing is, they don't live in the same place that much, so it's rare. But if they did exist in a post-human world where dingoes exist all over Australia, absolutely they will be in conflict. But this is a fight raptor has pretty good chances of winning, because dingoes are not as robust build as big cats or bears, so they can have a decent chance of fighting off one of these things. And at the same time, scavenging will be an option, as well as actual predation, because I think camels are some of the animals in Australia right now which have no predators because of their high center of gravity, long legs, and their them having so much meat on them. It could actually be a viable prey option for these neo-theropods once they grow to Utahraptor sizes. Because the camel is so tall and has long legs with a higher center of gravity, latching onto a camel and pinning one down would be relatively easy for these neo-theropods, and they could potentially also outlast them in a chase. So firstly pursued predation, but eventually pinning them down and killing them with a deadly bite. They probably will also evolve more deadly teeth, but that's a whole different scenario. We are talking about teeth, because which type of teeth can actually evolve into theropods. More likely is that they will keep their raptor-like teeth and hunt much similarly to how raptors hunted back in the day, in the Mesozoic. And they would probably hunt camels. They would probably still struggle against things like buffalo, because buffaloes are way too robust build and can actually do serious bone breaking damage to a raptor. But something like a camel as well as kangaroos, maybe if they are the size of Utahraptor, then some larger species of deer, all of these could eventually be viable prey options. So with that, that's my conclusion to this topic. Let me know what you guys think. If you like the video, always like, share, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what are your thoughts on this, and what are your thoughts on new projects, because I'm always open to new suggestions. Do you guys want another versus battle video like the one I did for bear versus tiger, or Indominus Rex versus Spinosaurus? Or do you want a video similar to this where I discuss about my speculative evolution? I have my own series of speculative evolution which I would love to show you guys. Let me know if you guys want a glimpse of that, as well as let's say if you guys want a different video where I break down fighting styles, or address different strengths and weaknesses of different animals. Let me know in the comments. I'm eager to get new ideas. And keep watching. And as always, obviously,